You couldn't bootstrap a frozen shipping business without having a ton of cash. And the other thing we realized is our moms were our best customer.
You realize oh wow, our core customer is actually different than who we thought.
The Chomps brand you see today couldn't be further from what it was launched. As we started getting more consumer data and we could kind of understand who that core demographic was, we realized that we had.
Wow. We have Rashid Ali, the co-founder and CEO of one of the fastest growing food companies in the world, Chomps.
We started doing influencer strategy before it was really influencer strategy. Uncrate featured Chomps and it just blew up. And in one day, I had a few thousand orders. But it was the first time we're oh wow, now Chomps is appealing to more the general, broader consumer. And it was 5 times any volume we'd ever done with capacity.
Can we handle it?
Dude, we're gonna need $1 million to even fund this. And I was Kevin signed off on a certain volume. He didn't sign off on this, so.
The overnight success story, 8 years in the making before major traction, right? Yeah. So talk to me about the decision to remain bootstrapped, why that was the right one for you guys.
Running a business is super stressful. If we bring in investors, it would just bring even more stress, right? And the other thing I realized early on, both Pete and I share the mentality, it's
Welcome everybody to episode 6 of the Zeitgeist podcast. I am your host, Stephen Glanis, and I'm really, really excited about today's episode where we have Rashid Ali, the co-founder and CEO of one of the fastest growing food companies in the world, Chomps. Rashid, welcome to the pod.
Stephen, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
All right, so let's start from the top. For those that don't know about Chomps, I know that's hard to believe at this point. Tell us a little bit about what you guys were trying to do. How'd the idea come about?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, Chomps is the classic story of entrepreneurs kind of pivoting to find their way. Most people don't realize this, but Chomps was originally a company called Logic Meat Locker, and it was something that my partner...
Much better name now.
Well, Logic even had there was a reason it was called that, but I know Chomps is a lot more catchy. But my partner, Pete Maldonado, he originally had this idea when he was first getting into CrossFit. If you see Pete, he's this really jacked dude, not like me, but he's the pillar of health and fitness. And he learned about CrossFit. He was formerly a personal trainer in early days. And he got this idea. He went to the CrossFit Games. It's when it used to be in California. And he would see these CrossFitters walking around with their shirts off with these 8-packs. And he knew the amount of work required to build that physique. And then he went to the vendor village and he saw these CrossFitters in a line to get this meatball, this grass-fed meatball, and they were paying $15 for this meatball. And in his mind, he realized this CrossFit community. If I brought some sort of product that really aligned with them, could we build some momentum off of it? And so the original company, Logic Meat Locker, was to compete with Omaha Steaks, but offer a grass-fed beef version. So it was a frozen steak company. Think about ButcherBox.
Yeah.
And so I met Pete randomly through some college friends, and he kind of told me about this. His business has started. So the company started as this frozen steak business. We did that for 6 months. We realized 2 things: that we wanted to bootstrap the business, and you couldn't bootstrap it. A frozen shipping business without having a ton of cash. We couldn't figure out a way to make the economics work. And the other thing we realized is our moms were our best customer. We just weren't building traction. And Pete was well, I used to eat meat sticks growing up, those gas station brands that we all know, but I won't eat them anymore because it's crap ingredients.
Right.
And so the original idea was can we make a shelf-stable meat stick? There was nothing really done like that in the market, and that's how the Chomps brand was originally born. This is in 2012, so 13 years ago. And the goal was we wanted grass-fed, we wanted non-GMO, we wanted no antibiotics, we wanted sugar-free, we wanted just a simple, clean ingredient meat stick because there was nothing like it on the market. And that's really how the idea came to.
And on top of the CrossFit movement coming in, some of the things that happened alongside of that were the rise of these specialized diets.
Yeah.
Keto, Whole30, Paleo. Talk about what a tailwind that was at the time. And when you guys, when Pete was either had his clients or he's trying to adhere to those diets, what were some of the big struggles? I read that his jaw was getting sore from how much jerky he was having to have. What cool stories you have from that time period?
Yeah. What was interesting, because in the jerky category encompasses traditional jerky and meat sticks, and some companies launched meat bars, but we really liked the stick format. Like you said, Pete always said, like when we were eating jerky, if you've had like really dry jerky, it's hard and it's hard to chew. So we're like, the snack sticks were just easier to eat. We thought it was a better experience. We could use trim, which is like the best parts of the animal, where it's like with jerky, you could only use certain cuts and it limited your ability to scale. So like for us, sticks was like the perfect avenue. And you're right in that CrossFit was one community that we really gravitated toward, but at the same time, paleo was really gaining momentum, and then keto came. In early days, we realized that the Chomps brand carried really no weight. Nobody knew what Chomps was, but they knew what CrossFit was. They knew what paleo was. They knew what whole. And so what we would do is we would align with these trending diet tribes and find folks that were influential within those communities and real brand advocates and a lover of the product. And so that's kind of, we started doing influencer strategy before it was really influencer strategy. And the other thing we realized within the CrossFit community, we all had friends that did CrossFit. And typically that was the friend that you would look to for advice, right? If they were eating something, and you didn't necessarily have to follow that lifestyle, but you're like, well, if Joe's doing it, he's jacked, right? And like, he must be doing something right. He really likes this brand Chomps. And so like, again, it was really that like nano influencer where like within your friend group, you had the one guy that was, or female that was like really fit, and I'm gonna look to see what she's doing because it clearly is working. And so we started learning a lot of these tactics early on, and it helped kind of build a good foundation of really like dedicated consumers.
Yeah, and in that period, I remember it like very vividly. That 2012 period. You also have like Instagram really kind of becoming a thing. Like we had been, we're of the age that like got to have Facebook through its rise and everything, and seeing the power of social media when we were in college, having all those people that you went to college with connected, and seeing pictures of what they're doing and knowing their birthdays, etc., was all really big. The thing that I distinctly remember about that period, 2012, I remember me and my 4 roommates at the time, we decided to go paleo for like 90 days, and we did P90X, like at the same time. So we never did the CrossFit stuff, but we actually did that. And, I went from like 230 to 185 in that period. And, it was kind of like the best shape I'd been in since high school. And it was, so much of that was the diet. And when you're talking about, having this meat stick, that was like super easy. My cousin who was doing it with us was still probably like a 5 Slim Jim a day type of guy, go downstairs to the 7-Eleven, but it's so cool. One thing that I thought was really interesting, you said earlier, you realized your moms were your best customers. And then fast forward to when you really start unpacking this brand, it ended up being that women were like the majority of the consumers. Talk about that, like, especially because, you're 2 guys, the brand has kind of a masculine name originally. I know the original packing was like literally in like cowhide. Exactly. So tell me about like that realization when you realize like, oh wow, like our core customer is actually different than who we thought.
Yeah. So, we launched the company and it was really just like 2 guys. It was a side hustle, right? We wanted to figure out like, could we build some momentum? And in 2016, right, there was a big opportunity where we got our first retail shot. And so we started getting more eyes on the brand. But originally, like the Chomps brand you see today couldn't be further from what it was launched as. The original logo was like a cow branding, right? It was Chomps, and it was like, imagine when you see that brand. Yeah. And like you said, the carton was this cow hide, and it was very masculine, like every other jerky brand. And so as we started getting more consumer data and we could kind of understand who that core demographic was, we realized that like our packaging and brand ethos wasn't serving that consumer. And so we wanted to think hard around like, let's lean in more to the brand personality. And when we realized, oh, it's 70% female, like it was an eye-opening, but we never wanted the product to come off as feminine, right? And so when we did the brand work, we realized that like we wanted to be fun, we wanted to be approachable, we wanted to be something that stood up on shelf, but really truly reflected what the brand was. And we went through a few iterations of the refresh, but it wasn't until like 2018 that we worked with, she was the ex-creative director of Chipotle, and she came and helped us kind of on the side. It was one of her first projects since she left Chipotle. She kind of helped bring to life this personality that we wanted, and it's really the brand that the way it stands today. And it's pretty, there's a lot of little things that some people don't even realize. Like obviously the colors are bold and bright, but when you open a Chomps stick, there's a Chompspiration, or there's like a inspirational statement within each one, kind of like a fortune cookie, and each stick is different. So there's other things that we wanted to bring out that brand personality. And to this day, we're realizing that yes, we serve a female consumer, but there's a lot of men that eat it. There's a lot of kids that eat it, and we think that this kind of new brand image that we stumbled upon actually serves all of the consumers, especially as it's continuing to evolve.
Yeah. So number one, I love that branding work, not just that you did, but like even when we went through to Cameo, and to be like a front-facing consumer brand, you have to nail it, because that, like, being that cool packaging, or you think about Peter, what he did with Protein Bar, what he's or RX Bar, and what he's doing now with David. It's like he's got the macros right up front. You know what the ingredients are. That just, when you're looking at the shelf and there's all these things to pick up, like people are judging the book by the cover.
Absolutely.
Tell me some more of the little like Easter eggs that that you guys have put into the brand, and taking it one step further. Do you remember distinctly any of the questions that got asked during the branding exercise that like really stood out? And I'll give you an example. When we were getting ready to, when Cameo was just an idea, we hired a branding firm out of Miami, out of Wynwood. This is back in 2017, to come up with some names. At the time, we were just calling it Project Power Move, because we just needed a filler name. And they came up with like 4 or 5 names. It was Hero Hub, it was Whammy-O, it was Hyped, HYPD. So we have all these names, whatever. And then I go and download my whole LinkedIn list. I send it out there, and basically all the choices like were less popular than Power Move, what it was. So we're thinking a lot about it. And then eventually my little brother's like, hey, I think it should be called Cameo. Cameo is like, that's what they're doing. These people are making cameo in your life. So as we're talking to the branding firm with this new name, one thing they asked me was like, Steven, if your brand was a person at a party, if Cameo is a person at a party, who is it? And a story that I gave at that time is still like one that we talk about a lot at Cameo. And I go, imagine it's the NBA All-Star Weekend in Chicago, and you hear about Michael Jordan's private party. It's going to be like the best party of all time. There's no way you're not invited. You're not on the list. It is like going to be the hardest ticket of all time. You find out where it is, and you and your friend decide to like show up at the party. The line is around the block 2 times. There's security. Like, there's no chance you're getting in. All of a sudden you see like an Escalade open up, and there's a bunch of like really famous people, but like you realize you see somebody that you hadn't seen since college. You played beer pong against them like one night, like 10 years ago. You had a great night with them. You follow them on Instagram. They don't follow you, but like, that they're plugged in, and you make eye contact, and all of a sudden that person like waves you in. So suddenly, like, now you're in the party. It's the best party you've ever seen, the best food, the best booze. Like, the crowd is unbelievable. And then within the party, there's like an inner sanctum. There's a red velvet rope. And behind the red velvet rope is everyone you've ever wanted to meet. It's like Obama and Oprah and like Michael Jordan, like they're smoking cigars. You just can't even believe this group of people is there. And suddenly, like, that person comes, opens the red velvet rope, waves you in, and introduces you to every single person there like you're their best friend ever. And I'm like, that's Cameo. So to this day, when you walked into the Cameo office, you saw that red velvet rope on the side. You see that red carpet. Like, our first core values roll out the red carpet. So I love those branding firms and those branding exercises for that identity, because it's such a key part of category creation. Do you have any stories like that you really remember from that time?
I mean, that was a pretty cool story. I wish I could have one with such detail, but I would say, like, when we were doing the branding work, it always starts with the consumer work, right? To figure out like who your core consumer is. And we talked a second ago about CrossFit, and we realized like our core consumer wasn't that hardcore CrossFitter. It was really what we call an active achiever. It's someone that wants to live a healthier lifestyle. They want to eat a little bit better. They want to be a little bit more active, but it doesn't necessarily be that diehards that's doing it 24/7. And so first we understand like it's this active achiever, and we wanted to make sure that the brand ethos kind of spoke to them. So you'll see like when we went through the brand work, there was like, maybe they give you 12 options and you whittle it down. And a lot of times it may have looked cool, but it didn't necessarily accomplish what we wanted to. We wanted clean, straightforward, simple, exactly like the ingredients that Chomps offers. And so one of the big unlocks we realized was several brands had like 2 or 3 colors, and it was very distracting. And so like the one thing we wanted is like we wanted a single color flow. And so if you think about it, our sticker packaging, it's the bold red, and then you have the Chomps logo, and the logo is front and center because we wanted to make sure people really connected with the brand.
Right.
And now if you look on the shelf, like you mentioned, Peter, at RX, they took the similar approach. What was that single color, and the color spoke to the flavor that you're doing. And there's some brands that are starting to get it and bring that to the table. I think Goodles is another one, right, where we're doing those pop colors. I think, we did this brand work similar time that RX did, and we actually started the companies at the same time. So I think it really spoke to the consumer. They gravitated toward the brand, and again, it helped tell the message. And so that's where, again, the work was always, okay, our current consumer is this female consumer, but we also wanted to make sure that we knew that the brand could speak to a number of other consumers. So we had to figure out like what's next, and it's tough, right? We did the refresh in 2018, right? We're 6 years later, and I think that the branding is still relevant, and it's still working. And while we make tweaks here and there, like the foundation hasn't changed, which is tough. Like a lot of I sit on the board in some other brands. It's like every couple of years they're talking about a brand refresh, and in my mind I'm like, what's it going to accomplish? It's just so much work. Like to change your brand and packaging is an absolute nightmare. So you really need to make sure that it's going to drive value and it's needed.
Well, I think the versatility of it is what really like sticks out to me of your branding. And it's not surprising that now like the kids vertical, so you started with women doing really well, and it's like the colors, it's just like it's accessible, which I think is super cool.
So we always talk about, people talk about in businesses seasonality, right? For the longest time, our Super Bowl was January, New Year, New You, right? It's when everyone starts, health is on the mind, they want to eat right, and to do that, you need something.
It's the opposite of my busy season.
But it's just crazy. It was always January, and in our minds, we're like, well, we're going to own January, but why can't we own back to school? And that's the new one we're really going after. We did the first experiential pop-up a couple months back in Austin. It was called the Protein Pop-Up, and we wanted to really lean into that back to school season and own it as the preferred snack. So the team came up with this crazy idea to refurb an old gas station, and we were going to clean the inside of cars and get them ready for a school drop-off and put this organization stuff in the back, and you could go in and spin a wheel and win swag and get your favorite Chomps stick and make these keychains. And it was this, if you haven't seen it, you got to check it out online. It was a pretty amazing activation, but it was really to like start connecting Chomps with that back to school season. And it's pretty exciting now. Like, the team has grown. Like we have over 155 folks, and we have a lot of depth in each of the functions, but the marketing team and the creative team, and they're really starting to bring to life these new experiences to help connect to the evolving customer as we continue to grow.
So obviously that CrossFit community was huge from the beginning. Getting the Pope's blessing on Whole30 and a lot of these diets were big. You mentioned earlier that you guys were doing influencer marketing before anybody was doing influencer marketing. Talk to me about how you found those kind of, whether it was the nano influencer, the micro influencer, or the person that's like literally creating, the diet and is kind of the Pied Piper of the movement. Tell me some of those early stories of like how you got in touch with them, like what those conversations were like, what the value prop was.
Yeah. So I think early on, like when Paleo was building traction, it's simply doing research and understanding like, are there certain events or activities where a lot of these folks are going. So for Paleo in Austin, they had Paleo FX, and it was this cool trade show. It was a little small where we would exhibit, and that's where all the major Paleo influencers would come. Folks
They're speaking.
Like Sarah Ballantyne was like the Paleo mom. Very influential in the States. You had this one like Dave Asbury, right? The Bulletproof Executive, right? When it was just like biohacking was becoming popular. It's where all these guys would go. And it was just a great way to get in front of them, to talk to them and connect to them and build a real, because the worst thing you can do is have an influencer back your product, but not really weave it into their lifestyle. And that was not the case here, right? All these folks, they were diehard Chomps fans. And at this stage, it was still that old branding, right? Where it was really the product. They're like, you check the boxes, the macros are right, the ingredients are right, so you have this winning product. And so we really, at that point, started to build these personal connections with them. And I say it was like influencer strategy before it had a name. It wasn't about just having them post online. Like one of the best tactics we realized were these like dedicated emails. So we would pay them, say, a few $1,000s to like send a dedicated email about Chomps, and we knew that email would generate 20 or 30K in sales. And so like we would do some that would work really well, and we say, okay, that's in our toolkit now. We would do like, because sometimes we'd do like blog posts or we'd pay for like banner ads, and we realized it didn't do anything. Like it didn't really drive any traffic because it really wasn't getting the attention of the consumer. And so like those dedicated emails were amazing. We found like really obscure ones. There was one guy that had this crazy paleo keto following, and for whatever reason it would hit like 100,000 or 200,000 users, and it was like the best performing one ever. It was Paleo Hacks was what it was called, and this guy just knew how to write emails. He knew how to connect with his community, so that was pretty awesome. But I would say one of the bigger unlocks where we proved that Chomps could win beyond these trending tribes was I don't know if you are familiar with this site called Uncrate.
Yeah.
So Uncrate, for folks that don't know, it's kind of like Maxim magazine. Like it's an app where every day it just shows cool stuff.
Super cool.
It could be cars.
I remember years ago on Uncrate, I bought this like saw that could saw through a brick. Just like I don't know why I needed it, but Uncrate said it, and I used to love that email.
And it was originally an email. Now there's like an app. It serves a very primarily male demographic. A buddy of mine was an investor in MeUndies, like so they put me in touch with the company that does Uncrate. And the way it works is you would send the editor samples of the product, and if they like it, they would feature it. If not, it would just, nothing would happen. And so I send samples to Chomps. This is like, I don't know, 2018. This would have been like 2016, 2017. And nothing happened. And I was like, they must not have liked the product. And so I'm then in Bali on my honeymoon, and Pete is moving from Chicago to Naples, Florida. And so when you're in Bali, like my phone was in the hotel because the service was crap. And I go into the hotel room and I check. And at the time we were using Shopify. And when you would get an order, you would get like a text message. And I go to my phone and I had like 1,000 messages. And at this point we were doing maybe a few hundred orders a week. Yeah. And in one day I had like a few thousand orders. And so Uncrate featured Chomps. They didn't tell us they were going to do this. And they just posted this little blurb about it. And it just blew up. And so it was the first time we're like, oh wow, now Chomps is appealing to like more the general broader consumer. Right. And well, first we had to email all the customers and say like we didn't have enough orders. And it was almost like one of those GoFundMes where we're like, it's going to take us a few months to fill the orders. And I would say like 99% of them were like, cool, we'll wait. Yeah. And so we ended up, me and Pete and his, like we had to manually fill all of these orders, and it was just overnight. We're like, oh, we're really onto something. Again, it was the old branding, but it was just a phenomenal product. So it showed that, the consumers wanted something like this, and that was, again, it was one of the bigger unlocks as in the early days of the company.
Now, not the first time you got an order that you couldn't fulfill or was so game changing. The famous story, for those that haven't heard it, I'd love you to tell the story about Trader Joe's.
Yeah. It's funny because Trader Joe's, first of all, one of the best retailers out there. They just, not only do they curate amazing products, they know how to price it, they know their consumer. So Pete gets a call from someone pretty senior at Trader Joe's, and they wanted to bring in a snack stick. Trader Joe's, because
they kind of had their own, but
they had one version. It was performing fine. For whatever reason, they wanted to bring in kind of the zero sugar, grass fed. It was around the time that Whole 30 was getting very popular.
And they wanted like a Whole 30 certified, I think I read.
Yeah. And so they call my partner Pete, and he calls me back. He's like, Trader Joe's just called, they want product. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like Trader Joe's is calling you. Because at the time, like we're doing about like 400K in top line. And when Trader Joe's calls, majority of the products are private labels. So they're like, we want to bring a Trader Joe's branded product. And at the time, like we had limited capacity, we had limited capital.
And you really want to get that brand out there.
Yeah, and so we convinced them that, if you want to bring in a Whole30 product, you want to bring in Chomps because that's what resonates with the Whole30 consumer. We talked about RX Bar. They brought RX Bar at the same time. There was a few products that they were bringing in that were Whole30 approved at the time. And so we were able to go back and forth. We were able to convince them, no, Chomps is what we wanted to bring, a branded product. We were able to work on kind of economics that made sense. And then they gave us estimates of what an order would be. And it was like, 5 times any volume we'd ever done with our co-man. And, we worked with them to say like, we would need some pretty crazy lead times to be able to execute. And they agreed to it. And so first step was to get them to agree to the lead times. Then we had to go and convince my manufacturer, hey, by the way, we're going to produce more than you've ever produced in like a 3-month period.
So question on that, just because I've never had to deal with like physical product in that way. The producer, like, is the reason they wouldn't say hell yeah to that, is it just like a bandwidth capacity issue? Or because there shouldn't be, if you've got like a big PO from Trader Joe's, they're not worried about like out trade risk, right?
No. It's really just
like
capacity.
Can we handle it?
Right, because at the end of the day is like, think about like you're running this machine, right? And you're asking to run it 5 or 10 times harder than you've ever done. It can break, right? For any manufacturing facility, you want to typically run it at 80%. Because if you run it at 100%, like it's too hard on the equipment, it's too hard on the infrastructure, it's too hard on the labor, right? Like, you talk about, are they running a first shift and a second shift? Do you now have to work weekends? And it's like, it just puts so much pressure on the business. And the question is it worth it, right? Because it was an initial PO.
Yeah.
An initial PO doesn't necessarily dictate that it's going to lead to a reorder.
Right.
And so you have to make the call.
And if you ramp up people on that, you allocate new machines or whatever, and then that follow-up order doesn't happen.
Yeah. You've now jeopardized.
That sets something else back.
And you're jeopardizing your core business, right? And so we had one manufacturer at the time, Kevin Westerns in Greentop, Missouri, awesome guy. And he told me no like 12 times, but I asked the same question a little bit differently. Finally, I got him to agree to it. And so we had the capacity lined up. Then we had to figure out like, how are we going to line up all this beef? How are we going to make sure we get the packaging? How are we going to get, and so when I'm building the model, I realized, well, shit, we're going to need like $1 million. Like if this comes, the original number was like $500,000. So like we started figuring out, well, first let's get the PO and then we can figure out how we're going to solve it. And so I remember my parents happened to be in town and we're playing spades at the table. And at the time when POs came through, they were faxed, but then we had this app that converted to a text message. So like my phone's going off. I got 1 fax, 2 fax, 2, and 8 for each of the Trader Joe's DCs. And I'm adding them up. And then I get on the phone with Pete and I'm like, and he's stoked. He's like, did you see this? I was like, Pete, this is more than we discussed. Like this is.
Well, the sales guy versus the ops guy.
Well, it was double what the original forecast was. I was like, dude, we're going to need like $1 million to even fund this. And I was like, Kevin signed off on a certain volume. He didn't sign off on this. So I'm like, I'm updating my model. I'm figuring it out. And so like, this was like on a Thursday and we had to let Trader Joe's by like Monday if we accept the order.
Yeah.
And so over the weekend, we were fortunate to raise this $1 million through friends and family. It was debt only, so we didn't have to give up any equity.
Yeah.
My brother really came to the table. He actually also made me sign a personal guarantee.
Yeah.
But as a result, I didn't have to give up equity at the time. But so we were able to raise the money. We were able to work with our manufacturer and suppliers to produce the product. But even when we were telling the folks that lent us the money, we're like, we were going to do everything we can to make sure that this is a successful launch. It's backed by Trader Joe's. But like at the end of the day, we're producing a food product. Right. And we've all cooked a steak. And we've all overcooked it, right? At the end of the day, like it is not a perfect process. And so like there is some inherent risk. We gave them a really attractive interest rate at the time. And, we spent a lot of time during the production and we're able to execute flawlessly. And the crazy thing is, Trader Joe's gave us some really aggressive projections to support this order. And within, I want to say like 2 months, we got another set of PO order, like larger than before.
And is that because you guys just blew those aggressive projections out of the water?
Out of the water. We I want to say like 10x like any product they had previously had.
Wow.
And originally when you launch at Trader Joe's, you're on like this new item end cap. And so we were on the item end cap, we were in line. And eventually like you'll realize that Trader Joe's Chomps is typically at front end. And because everyone realizes how well it performs and it doesn't take up a lot of space and it can generate a lot of revenue. And
Put it right there.
We the velocity just kept growing and kept growing. So it was pretty crazy. So like that year we 10x the business. We put a lot of pressure on our co-man, but the volume continued to come. And so it allowed him to continue to grow this facility. I mean, when we first were there, he had like a single truck oven. Now it's this 40,000 square foot commercial facility, like producing significant volume as a result. But it put a lot of pressure on. Like Kevin, like jokes to me after time. He's like, I don't know how you got me to agree to this, Rashid, because it put so much pressure on the business. But it was a pretty fun time. And a lot of times, like when you get an opportunity like that, we had a lot of people in our ears saying, now that you're in Trader Joe's, you have so many eyes on the product.
Yeah.
Right. You need to get aggressive. Go into the natural.
Yes, I was literally just going to ask that question, right? Because Trader Joe's, for those that have been there, like it's actually kind of the perfect place to launch this.
Yeah.
But it is not, the scale of an Albertsons or a Costco or anything like that. Jewel, Dominick's in Chicago back in that time. How does like loyalty work like with the retailer? Because I would assume part of the reason they went so big was like they had this thing, they were riding a wave, and they basically saw like, hey, this whole 30 things becoming a thing, paleo's becoming a thing. We want to be the place where you're shopping for that. But it is a limited footprint compared to like a lot of the other retailers that we've talked about, or Whole Foods. So how does that work when you're like, you have this great partnership with one, but like a product like yours, it does need to get everywhere?
Yeah. Well, we made a very tough decision, and we decided, we launched in 2016. We didn't launch in any other retailers in 2018. We were going to be the best Trader Joe's partner possible for 2 years, because we were figuring out how do you scale the business, how do you grow awareness. So we did e-commerce, right? We had Chomps.com and we had Amazon, and we had Trader Joe's.
And at that time, what was the split between e-com versus Trader Joe's?
The daily conversation was like Trader Joe's concentration. Like at one point it was probably like 90%, then 80%. And you just continue to grow the business around. But the problem was like Trader Joe's was still growing too.
Right.
So it was really challenging to kind of reduce that concentration. I mean, it's risky to have like one single customer making up such a big piece of your business.
Well, also when you're selling through a store, especially at that time, like obviously retail media, and we can go talk about that next, like has kind of been a game changer, I would assume, for a brand like yours. Yeah. But at that time, like you don't have the same data about your customer, when somebody's going to Trader Joe's and buying, especially if they don't have the loyalty program. Yeah. Versus like what you get on Amazon or Chomps.com.
Yeah, so like Trader Joe's is like for most retailers, they will report, meaning like you can buy cash register data. Like Trader Joe's is one that doesn't. So it's kind of like a black box.
Right.
So even when you're talking about like how do you go into retail, typically you need to say like, you look at my syndicated data and it tells a story. And we could tell the Trader Joe's story, but no one would believe it. Our velocities there were just, it didn't make any rhyme or reason.
Right.
And but you also have to think about in Trader Joe's, we were the only snack stick there. A lot of times we were front end. It was priced right. The consumer got it. So like our retail strategy has always been brand awareness needs to be ahead of distribution. And so when we think about, okay, after Trader Joe's, okay, now it's time to get into additional retailers because we have to address concentration.
Right.
The natural channel made perfect sense because it's like the natural consumer understands what grass-fed is. They see the orange butterfly and they know that's non-GMO project verified, right? They know about no antibiotics or no hormones. So like they kind of understood everything. Because if they don't, you have to over-invest in trade or marketing, right? You have to try to convince the consumer why they should grab that product. So in the natural channel, they got it. And so obviously, naturally, you think about Whole Foods, you think about Sprouts, you think about Fresh Time, a local Illinois retailer. But so like those were the ones that we really focused on initially. So like our retail strategy was very thoughtful around like first natural, then you dip your toes in conventional, then you go to mass, then you go to club. And so like little by little we grew. But if you look at a traditional jerky brand, most jerky sales is done in the convenience and C-store. And we're still like, even to this day, we're barely in any C-store. It's because we really wanted to focus on where's our consumer, where are they shopping, and will it make sense? So yeah, in 2018 is when we first started going after the natural channel. We partnered with Whole Foods, and from there we just kind of built brick by brick after that. But it's interesting because you mentioned like, yes, Trader Joe's brought us in, but we continue to service them amazingly well.
Right.
And so as we grew our retail footprint, there's no animosity, right? At the end of the day, like a Trader Joe's consumer is very loyal. They're going there for certain items. And a lot of times, most people still say, oh yeah, I buy it at Trader Joe's, right? Or like I discovered it there because of the first one. But no, I mean, as long as you're still delivering, you're still performing, the retailers get it, right?
As you started getting out of the natural retailers and into conventional and then to the clubs, did they get it? Did they obviously I understand, the why Whole Foods or Sprout would get what you're doing, but when you were talking to Sam's Club or Costco, right? Did they at that time were the trends so obvious that because they're almost like laggards at that point?
Right. Well, so I would Sam's and Costco, I'd set it aside. When I think of conventional, I think of
Albertsons,
Safeway, Kroger, right? Like Jewel, more your conventional grocery. I grew up in Des Moines, I was Hy-Vee, right? That's going to be a conventional one. And so I would say several years ago, it's not that the buyers got it, right? They knew that there was something there, but some retailers would be a little bit, they would want to really see that there's traction. So there's certain retailers that have said no to us for 10 years, right? And it wasn't in the last couple of years that finally they said yes, and maybe they brought in one item, and now we have a full shelf. And it's so I think right now there's a window where everyone understands what we're doing. Protein is all anybody's talking about.
Right.
But 3 to 5 years ago, no, it was an uphill battle. Launching in those big conventional groceries like an Albertsons, Safeway, Kroger, I mean, it's tough because you are competing against these two strong legacy brands that own so much real estate and really invest in trade. And so a big portion of these buyers' marketing fund is coming from these big legacy brands. Chomps is not a big brand. We have to really control how we're investing our dollars, right? We were bootstrapped all the way till end of 21. And so we had to be profitable since day one because our cash flow was funding the business. And so it was an uphill battle. A lot of times, when I'm talking to other brands, people get so excited when they get on shelf. And I'm like, dude, getting on shelf is easy. It's getting the reorder, right? Yeah. It's not about that initial purchase. The most important metric that we follow is your repeat rate, right? That second purchase or the third purchase or that brand loyalist that's purchased 5 times. You need to understand why is that happening and what item are they gravitating to? The other challenge we realized is, I think the metric now, it changes, but say 60 to 70% of our consumer has never shopped the jerky set. So they're not even walking by where your product is. Right. And so that's inherently another challenge. Most of our consumers are shopping the perimeter and we're in line. And so there's all these challenges that we're continuing to navigate even at the scale we are today. That it's once you were in the conventional grocer and the club and mass, these new challenges that we're being confronted with.
Let's talk about the butterfly. You've gone all over the world to try to find the right supply to go in because again, for this community, input in, quality in is quality out. As far as you're getting your 8-pack that way with the right stuff, coming into your mouth. Talk about some of the crazy places you've gone to source meat and where we were talking about this before off camera, but what's the mecca that you found for raising grass-fed cattle?
So it's me and Pete have truly traveled the world trying to find the best beef providers, and we found some good domestic partners. We've been to New Zealand, has a lot of grass-fed beef. We've looked at South America cautiously to look, Europe, but honestly, we met a producer in Australia, primarily Southern Australia. So think Melbourne and then Tasmania, which is an island off of Australia. And we realized not only do they have a ton of grass-fed, but from our perspective, Tasmania specifically, its geography is so perfect for growing cattle year-round. You see the grass and it's so dense, almost like moss, and you see how big these cattle get, and you're they're just eating grass, and it's because it's so nutrient dense. But not only is there a ton of grass year-round, there's no GMOs in Australia, so it's non-GMO, and it goes even further to non-GMO project verification, which is a very strict program to really validate that no GMOs are making in the product. On top of that, it's not only, there's programs that'll say no antibiotics or no hormones. It means that during a certain period of their life that they haven't been, but we're what's called NAE, no antibiotics ever. So they cannot receive any antibiotics during its entire life. So if an animal gets sick, they're going to treat them, but then it falls outside the program, right? And so like such strict standards around what it's fed, how it's treated, and then also it goes as far as the humane treatment of the animal, right? A good portion of our beef is certified humane, where it's like really dictates how the animal can be treated from all the way birth all the way through harvesting, like to make sure that there's no stress in the animal's life. It's, there's also a degree to the quality of the meat. If the animal is very stressed, it impacts the lactic acid, and it actually leads to a lower quality meat. So like an animal that lives an amazing life actually yields far higher quality. So we've really anchored on the Australian region. A significant portion of our product continues to proudly be sourced from there. We do continue to look at domestic options because there are really good pockets, but the problem now is like I would need to build a program of thousands of farms because they're so small producers.
Right.
And it's something
or even, even if they're producing it right, like is all the feed, like there's just so much that goes into like truly to get a non-GMO.
Yeah. To get at our scale, like to get all non-GMO is it's very tough. And that's the one thing to think about is like not all grass-fed is created equal. Like you'll go out there and you'll see a lot of products that are saying grass-fed, but if you double click to say like, is it non-GMO project verified? Is it antibiotic free or no antibiotics ever? Like, is there any, humane treatment claims on the product? Like at the end of the day, people will do what's, Pete and I refer to as like greenwashing, where they're trying to give the consumer what they think they want, but they're taking shortcuts to be able to improve their margins. Like Chomps just hasn't, it's not in our ethos to do that.
So earlier this summer, I got to see the Starbucks CEO talk, which was an incredible conversation. And he's on the board of one of the major retailers. And one of the things he was saying about the grocery aisle is basically like, everything like on the outside, which were the chips, like the Mondelez type products have really just gotten crushed.
Yeah.
And then everything on the inside, like that protein rich, is doing exceptionally well because of GLP-1s. Talk about like the GLP-1 trend and like how that is that the next CrossFit for you guys? Is that the next big tailwind, propelling the business forward?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because like GLP-1s is like all anybody's talking about. And there's a lot of products now that are kind of engineered to serve that community. And our perspective is like, we're trying to deliver an amazing snack that can work for several lifestyles, right? And it happens to be one that's really good for the GLP-1 diet. There's a lot of studies. Cornell did this study, and I think I just read another report from NIQ where it's showing like the most categories, especially salty snacks, there's a significant reduction in consumption for folks that are on the GLP-1s. And it measures it from like the first 30 days they're on it to 60 to 90. And as they get deeper into it, like they're consuming less and less. The two categories that they saw growth are meat snacks, and it really magnifies as they continue to grow because they're trying to get protein. And the other one is, it's like cottage cheese and yogurt. Like both are having booms. Like kefir would fall into that too. I know you had Julie on previously. And so it's ironic where like historically meat snacks is viewed as like not necessarily like a health food, but the problem is like if you're on GLP-1s, it's almost like conscious calories. Every calorie you eat has to count because you can only eat so much because your appetite is so suppressed. And so
Thanksgiving full.
Exactly. And so you should be getting majority of your calories from fresh foods, but we all live very busy lifestyles, right? And so what Chomps is doing, it's a convenient, it's a tasty, and it's a macro that's going to help you. And as a result, it's really, really resonating strongly with the community, unlike a lot of the other snack foods.
So all of these tailwinds are happening, and through this time, you guys remain bootstrapped, which I think is, for a lot of that period.
Yeah.
Talk about the pressure that you guys ever had at different points to raise capital, especially, and again, like I'm sure when you guys started, like you couldn't, like it's almost impossible to raise for that category. And then all of a sudden you have like things like the RX bar exit, and now everybody's looking for like the next health, food that they could come and invest. Talk to me about like the decision to remain bootstrapped, like why that was the right one for you guys, and the different points where like you guys were at a fork in the road, if that ever happened, like raising capital versus not.
Yeah. So I would say like some businesses require capital, right? So I think Chomps was very fortunate in that we were able to find an operating structure that allowed us to build it profitably, generate cash flow to fund the business. But like, and that's all I know now, right? And the other thing I realized early on, both Pete and I share the mentality, it's like running a business is super stressful. And if we bring in investors, to me, it was like, it would just bring even more stress. Because again, like I value my reputation and my word, and I want to win. And me and Pete are so fiercely competitive where it's like, if we took on that money, then it's like, not only do we want to like represent the brand, then we also have to make sure that the investors are happy. And for us, it was like, it could almost bring competing goals, right? And so we really understood our unit economics. We really understand how to control investments in the right area. And we were able to build a business brick by brick all the way through the end of 21. You know, there were some early folks that we had talked to. We brought in little money here and there, but nothing, it was never about like raising money. Like maybe we had someone in our ear and they were giving us advice, but it wasn't until the end of 21 where we took a serious look to say like, maybe it's time to de-risk a little bit. And the catalyst for that was COVID.
Right.
Like when the lockdown first started, we saw like, so we were digitally native, e-commerce for the first 4 years. So we had like a huge head start on e-commerce. If you guys recall, like once COVID happened, everybody was pivoting to online because foot traffic was almost went to zero. And so we saw this huge influx and we thought we were bulletproof. Like we were flying high. Like at first there was a huge spike in retail traffic because people were buying because they were concerned what was going to happen. And so like we got these huge POs from our partners and we're like riding high. And then all of a sudden the lockdown happened and our retailers called us and they're like, hey, by the way, those POs, like we have to cancel them. And we're like, what do you mean you have to? Like I think we had 4 million in POs that we were producing against. And you have to be a good partner. Like your largest retail partner is saying like, we can't fill the order. They're not doing it because they're terrible people. They can't, there's no foot traffic. So we're like, okay, we have to figure this out. So we're sitting on tons of inventory. Like our e-commerce kind of sales kind of went back to normal levels. We had zero traffic on the retail side and we're sitting there like, what are we supposed to do? You know, the team really got creative. We realized that, okay, well, most of our sales were impulse, right? It's like a grab and go snack. So we like came up with this, like, how do we get more Chomps in the pantry? We did this whole recipe campaign and we started showing how Chomps can be used as a pizza topper or in a salad, or we're just trying to be, and so like it started working. Little by little, we're burning through the inventory, but it was such a hard time where it's like, you know, there were challenges throughout the business, but it wasn't to that point where like, shit, like we may not be able to keep the lights on because we're not, you know, we're just like, we had all this inventory and we're fortunate to have like a 12-month shelf life. So we had a little bit of time. And so it was kind of coming out of COVID when Pete and I were like, we have personal guarantees on everything. Like this is our entire life. So should we take a look to see, is there a way to de-risk? And really just to de-risk me and Pete personally and our families, because you know, we start the company, we're just two dudes and it's a size hustle. Fast forward, now Pete and I both are married. We both have kids and we have these families and we're kind of the sole breadwinner. And it was like, okay, it's time. And so we wanted to make sure, like, one, we wanted to de-risk. Two is we wanted to align with a partner that understood what we were trying to do, but also be like what we call smart money, right? An advisor that thinks a little bit differently about the business. Because I think, you know, if you think about Pete and I, we both approach the world very differently and we bring varying perspectives. And I think it's valuable. The way we think about it is if you think the same way, you're going to run into the wall together. But if you can challenge each other, it may not be fun because you're always kind of like thinking about things differently, but you need it, right? You need the tension sometimes because it allows you to challenge in the right way. And so, end of 21, we ran a process. We aligned with an investor who had just kind of broke off from a smaller fund. We were their first food investment. It was a pretty significant check for them, but they really believed in the brand. And it was the first time we took any significant outside money. But the important thing about the transaction was Pete and I wanted to retain majority. We wanted to retain control. We still wanted to build the brand the way that we thought was necessary, but also kind of help de-risk us personally.
Yeah, it's amazing. One thing that really sticks out is like the founder market fit that I think you guys had, and an underrated element of entrepreneurship, especially for a business like yours, right? everybody sees the headlines, fastest growing food company in the world, last few years, but it was a slog for many, many, many years to get through that. It was, the overnight success story, like 8 years in the making before like major traction, right? So talk about especially for like young entrepreneurs that are listening and are thinking about starting a business and like trying to pick the right co-founder. What is it about like you and Pete's relationship that has been able to be so endearing? Like, how do you guys complement each other? You mentioned, you guys have different perspectives, and that, that iron sharpens iron mentality has been huge. But talk about like, what it's taken to keep that relationship going.
Yeah, I would say like any partnership is hard. Like I honestly, more often than not, you feel like they don't go the right way.
Right.
And I think mine and Pete's wasn't any different. I think in early days, like so Pete and I are very different in the way we think about business in the world. We're very type A, very competitive, and we want to win. But on the flip side, like it's interesting because me and Pete are both kind of come from immigrant backgrounds. We both have a bit of a chip on our shoulder. Like, I went to a public school. I wasn't the best. I wasn't the most studious. I was always kind of scrappy. I could always do really well in school, but it was me just trying to figure out like the least amount of work that was required to still get A's. But then I look at myself and my brothers. My two brothers went to phenomenal schools. My dad always gave me crap because I don't have a graduate degree. So like I have this sort of chip. Pete kind of struggled through school too. He kind of was this personal trainer. He never really had a 9-to-5. So like we share this kind of like hunger where it's like we're going to work harder than anybody else. But we do so in different ways. So Pete is kind of that visionary, big idea, creative. Like he'll call me with all these ideas all the time. And I'm like, originally I would kind of just shoot them down because I'm so distracted, in the weeds on the business. But now I've learned that like Pete needs to kind of be fostered and ask the right questions. So like he'll even tell you like he can't brainstorm better than with anyone else but me. And it's kind of ironic because in early days it wasn't the way because we would always butt heads. But I'm trying to always envision like what is he trying to accomplish? Where's he trying to go with this idea? And like maybe this doesn't work, but what about this? And so like whatever he calls me with, it's typically not what we end up with, but we both are jointly excited about whatever that may be. And so I think that's the way is you kind of have to feed off each other's strengths. And we eventually hired like this leadership coach. We joke around and say it was like a career counseling or marriage counseling. And we got big into like personality profiles and Disc Hogan.
I love all those.
But we realized like at the end of the day, like when I'm trying to process information, I ask questions. And Pete sometimes perceived as like I didn't trust him or I needed, and so like, no, he's like, he knows that Rashid is just going to ask questions until he gets enough information to be able to think through it. And sometimes like Pete is wired where for him to learn, he has to do. Like he's hard execution. Like me, I have a balance between execution and analyze. So I do need a degree of information to be able to process it, but I am able to run when I feel comfortable. Pete needs to run to be able to feel comfortable. And so for me, I'm like, oh, he's like, he's no patience. He just wants to run and do this. And now like we found this balance on how do we work together and take the best of both worlds. The other thing is like, he's very like sales and marketing focused. I obviously have a strength on the quant side, operations, finance, accounting. And so like the balance was really good where it's like, he could come with a great idea and I could figure out like, how do you scale it? How do you make sure that it's profitable? How do you think like not only about if we're doing single units, how do you think about getting to the scale to 1 million and being able to ask the right questions to say like, hey, I want to launch this really obscure ingredient. I'm like, dude, like I don't think we can necessarily this would be cool if it's like some niche thing and we only want to serve this tiny consumer, but what if we want to make it bigger? Like, is it going to work? And so we've been able to like figure out a way to work through any crazy idea he has and make sure that it has massive appeal.
So I'm guessing the venison came out of his.
Well, venison is interesting. Like venison, if you guys haven't tried it, it's got like this cult following. But venison was one where, I mean, when we spent time in New Zealand, like there's a ton of amazing venison, and that's one where it's not one of our top SKUs, but it's probably one of our best tasting ones, and some retailers don't get it. Venison also there's another brand out there that got really into game meat. General Mills ended up acquiring them. And so like there was like, oh, there's like this following that venison could be popular. It never really took off, but yeah, that's kind of one. I mean, we early days, we're doing alligator We were doing like water buffalo. We were doing like, we tested a bunch of these. And again, it was really like, okay, the venison I can scale because at least I knew where to find it.
Yeah,
like
where
the
am I
other
getting the
ones was
alligators
like,
from?
yeah, exactly. So we did some crazy ideas. And, we brought test sticks to market, but nothing where we could really truly scale it.
Talk about the current like SKU lineup, like what's the full roster, and then one thing I'm always interested. Julie and I spent a lot of time talking about this on her interview. Tell me about like the products that maybe you wanted to launch that you didn't, and how do you guys stay disciplined? Because I can imagine just even the kids offering, right? I'm sure that's something you guys have been thinking about for a long time, but then eventually, decided to make this push for back to school. How do you guys think about product expansion?
Yeah. So I'd say, unlike Julie, and by the way, Lifeway is a fantastic product, and I think there's certain categories where you have to have multiple SKUs to do it. Like, our business is really simple. Like, we only do sticks.
Yeah.
90% of my sales are in 3 recipes.
Were there other things that you thought about doing, or was sticks always like an obvious format for whatever reason?
We love the stick format. A lot of folks, they do a jerky, they do a stick, they do a bar, maybe they try like pork rinds, but for us, like we know how to make sticks really well, and we wanted to, like, the way I describe it is like, there's one Snicker bar, right? There's one Coca-Cola. Like we really are good at making sticks, and we really stay focused. And my favorite type of innovation, whether they say innovation through simplification, like one of the largest unlocks, because you talked about like in the last 3 to 4 years, like Chomps has really started to grow. And one of the biggest unlocks came out of COVID, right? When I was talking about like, how do we get more Chomps in the pantry? How do we start using that as an ingredient? Because Chomps historically was a grab and go. And what we realized is like, we now have these like 8-count pantry packs. And what we realized was, if we get more Chomps in the household, like the whole family will consume it, but it never impacted our single stick sales because that impulse grab and go was serving that use case, and the pantry brought in this whole new wave of consumers. And so one of the biggest innovations we've done was just put more sticks in a bag. And it doesn't sound like that much, but if you think about the economics of it, like my historical ring was like $2 for a single stick.
Yeah.
Now the ring goes to like $18 to $20, and my single sticks hasn't been impacted, and we're adding this. And so like all of a sudden,
Sean from Dude Wipes had a very similar story. So John Mayer was like ended up being like a huge fan of Dude Wipes, and he ends up DMing them on Instagram, and he said, hey dude, love your product, but gotta tell you, we live in a 2-wipe world, right? So they now have a 2-wipe pack where there's 2 wipes in the packaging. It cut their costs down. They sell it for more. It's been like a massive inflection point.
But it's like those, like, it's the simplest ideas where like there you're saying you're like effectively doubling the opportunity to get the product in a consumer's hand. And so like that was one huge unlock, is these pantry packs. And now if you shop the jerky aisle, you're going to see a lot of pantry packs, right? And it's like a lot of folks have followed suit to realize that that's the way to go. And the other thing, the innovation, is we have these minis we call chomplings, where it's like some folks don't want to eat. Our full stick is 1.15 ounce. A chompling is a half ounce. Some people want to have quick, right? Maybe it's like the stick is quite long. Maybe it doesn't fit into the purse well or the lunchbox well. So like the chomplings fit a different use case too. And so that's the next avenue, is like, how do we get more of these minis? But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. I'm cutting it longer, I'm cutting it shorter, I'm putting more in a pouch or less in a pouch. So like my core business on how we're making the product hasn't changed, but we're realizing the versatility of the product. So that's not to say, like, I'm biased, but I believe the Chomps brand has a lot of brand power, and we do have permission to expand within category. We have permission to expand out of category. We are doing a lot of work to figure out what could be next, but honestly, in the next 3 years, you're going to see some cool flavors. Maybe you're going to see different proteins. But at the end of the day, like, the core lineup is the core lineup, and it doesn't need to change. Like, our success is because we've been so disciplined and so focused and haven't been distracted by that next shiny thing. Like, our growth comes through depth in accounts, right? I want to be able to sell more Chomps in each door. Like, I think about how much revenue potential per door, because that's how you build a profitable business. And so we talked about like Chomps grows through incrementality, right? When I talk to a buyer, we're not saying, well, we're going to cannibalize your existing business. No, we're going to bring a new consumer to your set. And so like, that's what a buyer wants, is someone that's going to grow through incrementality. Like if you don't bring enough Chomps in the store, you may lose share in the category because other retailers may lean in heavier. And so that's what we're trying to think about is, how do we get maybe outside of the jerky set, right? How do we get like maybe this pack in the lunchbox aisle? Like why can't we be next to those protein bars? Because instead of putting a Z bar in your kid's lunchbox, why can't you put a Chomplings in there? And so that's where, again, when we think about innovation, it's just how do we get more Chomps in the household? How do we get it more in more product in the pantry? How do we get different points of distribution without the store? And so that's where we believe there's a huge opportunity to just continue to grow our core and base.
So speaking of innovation in retail media has become really big business. Yeah. How are you guys leveraging it? It's funny because it's a space like obviously I'd never heard about, and then all of a sudden for Cameo for Business, we've started to now have partnership discussions with a lot of the retail media networks that are looking for content. Right. How are you guys leveraging retail media? Has it been a game changer for you guys?
Yeah, I would say like we've always been very disciplined with how we're spending our media dollars, but I think now at our scale, we are having to figure out additional tactics to increase awareness. Again, our consumers not certain shop in the jerky house. We have to find a way to get their attention. Right. So there are a number of retailers that are really figuring out ways to create more awareness for brands through media channels. The other thing is the way consumers are shopping has changed. So not only are there new media opportunities like delivery, right? Their online platforms, Instacarts of the world. Like you really have to understand, like a lot of people talk about omni-channel and what that means, but like you truly need to understand the omni-channel strategy or you're gonna lose an opportunity, right? I think delivery, pickup, there's a different way to shop. Because if you think about it, people don't realize, well, if you're placing an order and if you're not merchandised the right way or you're not easy to find, that shopper that's buying your order is just gonna say it's out of stock. And then you've lost an opportunity. I mean, people don't realize that like there's a whole new behavior on how to think about that person shopping versus the normal consumer that may know exactly where you are. So it's all these different tactics that you have to understand. And it's like really mining the data and really understanding what's happening and being able to say, well, it says I was out of stock, but I wasn't out of stock. Oh, well, maybe because the tag wasn't right, or maybe it was not put in the right place. So it's like just really understanding that. The other thing I'd say is like there's some media strategies where they can maybe juice the numbers, but they're not going to really lead to stickiness or reorder. So you really have to navigate the platforms to understand that, is it an awareness driver to the right consumer, which means that eventually they'll continue to purchase it, or is it just going to like maybe artificially juice the number and then it's going to go back? Because the goal of any media strategy is you want to make sure that your baseline continues to increase, right? And so that's how you know it's a winning campaign. I'd also say it's quite timely. Last night, I don't know if you caught the Thursday night football game.
I saw. I was outside at Tavern on Rush, so I was watching through the window, but I didn't watch the game.
It's interesting because Amazon Prime bought the Thursday night rights.
Right.
And it was the first time that Chomps actually did a commercial ad with the NFL.
Oh, amazing.
On Thursday night. And then it was funny, I was at a dinner with YPO that Steve and I both are part of, and like my phone is blowing up. Like all my buddies are like, oh my God, we saw a Chomps commercial. And so like we are at our scale having to think of other ways to create brand awareness. And NFL, there's no sports platform that has more eyes right than the NFL. And so like the team is also like, okay, well, we believe that there's something there, but we can't do traditional media. Because I think if you think about like the TV, like I want to be able to, how do I retarget? How do I really find the consumer? How do I really understand who's watching it? And now through the Amazon platform, you're able to do that because you really can see the customer data, unlike you could if it's traditional. So looking for other strategies like that. And the other thing, there's remnant ads that we're thinking about. It's effectively like TV ads that maybe haven't been sold at like the normal premium price. And so like very last minute. So we may have a commercial teed up and some remnant opportunity may come in and we'll buy it at a fraction of the cost and it just plugs it in. And so
we used to do that with Out of Home a lot.
Oh, really?
One of my favorite activations we ever did. Reaction videos are such a big part of our business. So what we did was during Christmas 2018, we actually had this remnant billboard in Times Square. It was a 5,500 square foot billboard that was basically about to get replaced. So they weren't we were able to buy like kind of an eighth of it, or they would rotate with other companies, and we got it for like $8,000 or something, kind of like crazy for 1 week. And the whole campaign was, when you get your Christmas cameo, send them up, and we'll put the best reaction videos on a Times Square billboard for New Year's Eve, right? And then the crazy thing that happened was, it took them 3 or 4 months after that to actually like get rid of this billboard. So it continued to run in Times Square forever. But I love those type of like remnant opportunities. I think they're awesome. What are some of your favorite, like, obviously we talked about the experiential earlier, like what are some of your favorite like marketing campaigns you guys have ever run?
I think right now the big campaign we're running is Take Bigger Bites, because it's kind of like aspirational of like, it's not necessarily like physically taking bigger bites. Actually, you should chew your food well. Like it's this ethos around like, your consumer wants to aspire to be bigger. They want to eat healthier, want to live a healthy lifestyle. So like this Bigger Bites campaign has been phenomenal. The protein pop-up in Austin, that was a really cool campaign. But it's interesting because like we did this campaign in like 2018. Like when we realized like this female consumer was quite unique and special, we did this campaign that was She Eats Beef, and we would have these like She Eats Beef t-shirts, and we had like these videos, and like nothing ever came of it. But we thought like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. It's going to go viral, and it didn't. I think it's somewhere in one of our storage units, we probably have like thousands of She Eats Beef t-shirts. Like sometimes you'll see like random people at the gym wearing them, but like not all the campaigns land. But the other thing too is like from our perspective, you just need to do genuine campaigns that really resonate with your consumer. Like we haven't really needed to do any big crazy ideas to get attention. I think for the last several years, we've had a lot of supply challenges, right? And so this is the tipping point now where we're kind of switching from supply-led versus demand-led, which is a really interesting time. But now it's when we're having to challenge the team, because like the muscle they're flexing now is going to be different.
Very different. And
so the question is like, I have a really strong team, but like my guys, we're gonna have to think differently, right? Now we are gonna have to lean in and think about media investment strategy to grow awareness. Like sales, like how we have to figure out, like we've done really good to grow distribution. Like how are you gonna continue to grow depth in accounts? Like I don't want to necessarily just to continue to add doors. Like I want to make sure we continue to grow each retail account. Like what does it look like? Like what if I don't give you innovation at a category? Like how are you gonna continue to grow the set and come up with creative options? Like I was in the office the other day and we have this amazing like half pallet shipper that is going to go out to some of our key partners, where it's like they're putting so much product on the floor, but like maybe it's during the Super Bowl's time, or maybe it's that back to school, and it's like how do you get just more product on the shelf? So we haven't really had, like, I know like some of your others, like you talk about these crazy cool stories about influencers and celebrities, and it's like we haven't gone that route, but it's not to say that we're not going to, because I think
I also think too, right, some of the cool ones like Sean's, that was an organic customer. And I have to believe that whether it's pro athletes, like who are some of the most interesting people or most famous people that that are like, like love your product?
I wish I had a list like Julie had, but
Julie's was insane, right? It was even like Gorbachev.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I would say like, if you think
like
about
if any like teams adopted it,
like I mean, early days, like the 49ers were like, there's a ton of sports teams that were in the locker room, but again, like you said, it's organic, because like the nutritionist just knows that it's a genuine,
and it's the right thing to put in their bodies.
But like I would say, like there's a wealth of celebrities, and we'll like there'll be some new Netflix show and someone will send me a picture and we're just sitting there on the table randomly and we didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
But like there's like, you mentioned Howard Schultz, like the Starbucks founder. Like there's, Daniel Levitsky, the founder of Kind Bar, right? So like I ran into him at a trade show, and I was like, he's also been on Shark Tank, and he's just like a really cool guy in the space. And he hadn't heard about Chomps when I first met him. And then a year later at the same trade show, like he came to find me, because now Chomps is really on his way.
Like, I'm seeing you everywhere.
And the year after, he came and found me again. And that the Austin pop-up, he just organically posted on Instagram about like Rashid and Pete, this is an awesome activation. So like these folks were like you look up to, and like now like we're on their radar now, just because of truly organic grassroots, like brick by brick building. So yeah, I mean, like look, there's a lot of cool celebrity influential people, but again, we just kind of I want that mom that Chomps gets them through the day and she's put it in the lunchbox. Like those to me, like those are the most important customers. And that's really why the brand continues to grow the way it is, because like those are the folks that are going to order every single day, and they're going to talk to their friends, and they're going to spread the word.
Talk to me about future state. Obviously, you built this incredible business. You guys control it. You own the majority of it. What's next?
Yeah, I think right now there's a lot of demand for the product, and I think the category is on fire right now. And I think there's a lot of folks that are doing really, really well and growing in the space. But we also have had to say no a lot of times. We've recently opened a new manufacturing facility in Missouri, in a town called Mexico. I have to say Missouri first because it gets confusing, but it's in Mexico, Missouri. It's a small community.
You got to be careful, otherwise you're gonna get Trump's gonna tariff you.
Exactly. So the facility, just for the past 2 weeks, we're doing sellable product. It's coming online. So like right now, the current solve is like making sure we have enough capacity to keep up with demand and have capacity to support our 3-year plan. And that 3-year plan is really just our stick business. We have a really strong innovation team that's working hard on what's next. Because if I think about like 3 to 5 years out, like we want to make sure that we can continue building momentum. So it's trying to figure out like where does Chomps have permission to play? And the other piece is we have to figure out C-store, small format, right? There's so many doors out there that we're not in, and so it's trying to figure out like how do we win in gas stations?
Is C-stores convenience stores?
Yeah. And so like how do we win in that channel? It's convenience stores is different. Like unlike a big grocery store, they have like a storage, right? So in C-store, they have what's called DSC, direct store delivery. So you effectively have to deliver like every day, and so if you have a single product, it's tough to do. So you ask about like what's next.
What else? Yeah.
So Pete and I have control. We're enjoying every day. It's a different challenge. We try not to think too far ahead as far as what's next, but like at the end of the day, like, is there a partner that we'll have to align with to make sure we can continue to grow? Like, does the business become too big to have me lead and someone else has to step in? Like, I can't answer that question right now, but I know the time will come. Anytime you take outside capital, you have to have some sort of liquidity event, right? It could be going to a strategic. It could be IPOing. It could be simply doing a dividend recap and being able to like pay them out. So like we have always wanted to have optionality, right? Like when you think about like you never want to be sold. You want to be able to transact on your terms, right? And so like that's what we're trying to do. We're building the business for something that's going to be here to stay. Like we think a lot about like our legacy, but even when I talk about my team, I'm like, guys, you are in the trenches. You're the ones that are building this brick by bricks. This is not just mine and Pete's legacy. This is your legacy, and trying to think about, how do you instill that owner mentality, right? We think like a lot of my time now is thinking about our people and culture, and how do you make sure we keep them excited and engaged, and how do you balance, because like burnout's real, right? We push our team really hard. Like how do you thread that needle to make sure that you get the most out of it, but not to the point where, right, you're on the other side, because it's tough to recover once they really go over it. So I think that's a lot of it is about team. I mean, look at 3 to 5 years ago, we had 20 folks on the team, right? We're at like 160, we'll get to 175 at the end of the year. Like that's different, it's tough. And we're fully remote. I know you guys are in office. What was it?
Yeah, I mean, we were.
I love your story about
we were fully in office, then we were fully out of office.
Right.
Then I think in February, we announced that if you live in Chicagoland, you have to be back 4 days a week, and we gave you a $10,000 raise. And then for our employees that aren't in Chicago, we have a program called Team Week. This is actually one of them, where we will fly you to Chicago for 1 week a month, but it's the same week for everybody. Use it or lose it.
Right. And so we like, for our business, like because we service a national footprint of retailers, and for us, like we realize that we can operate well in a remote environment, but we can't just assume if we're remote that it's going to create connectivity across the team, that it's going to allow for collaboration and cross-functional work, that it's going to allow folks to kind of get that water cooler feel. So like a lot of the time is thinking about like, how do we, create that connectivity in this remote environment? And it's tough. It takes a lot of work. Like we do, a couple months back, we had a all hands retreat where we brought the whole team together. We were in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
We'll do like a holiday party where everyone's together. And then each one of our functions has to bring their team together 2 times a year. We have like a senior leadership team retreat. So it's like, it probably would be cheaper to just have a big office and have everybody come in, because it really starts adding up at this scale. But I have a really strong team where people are spread out all throughout the U.S.
Yeah.
And it allows me to get some top talent, but I have to overinvest in bringing them
Yeah,
together.
and by the way, we did that too, right?
Yeah.
During when we hit our peak in employee, we were like 400
That's
people,
crazy.
and we had people in 38 states and 14 countries.
That's crazy.
Right, and same thing. We would bring everybody to Chicago once a year, the week of Lollapalooza for our annual Cameopalooza events. We would do offsite, tech team offsite and HR off. Like everybody would have those offsites, and we still have a lot of that legacy stuff.
Right.
But at least for our culture, and by the way, ours is like the cool thing about your culture, as you mentioned, the business is this business inside and out. It's simple. The trends are not changing minute by minute. Our business, somebody goes viral and like it's all hands on. It's like newsroom culture for us here. And I've just found like me as a leader and the way that our team operates best, like it's been really important for us to get back.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example. Like a lot of times people like they'll ask like, what's advice you can give a founder or someone who's starting up? It's like, it's tough because like my journey is so specific to Chomps.
Correct.
Right. Even another food company, even another snacking company, like the steps that we took and what made us get to where we are today, it's because it's so unique to our product.
100%.
And so every company is different. Like one of my favorite pieces of advice that I do give folks is like, it's important to talk to other folks, but understand that the advice you are given has to be viewed through your company's lens. Because in early days, like we definitely copied what other people did. When RX Bar was on fire, like anything that Peter and Jared were doing, we're like, well, shoot, they implemented this tool, we're going to do that. And like, it never worked out because it wasn't right for our product or our company or our culture.
So you're not going to be selling COD?
No, we're not going to be selling COD, although that was a great, I loved it.
It was so good, except Peter sent me the COD and they came in like freeze dryer package, but it showed up on like Saturday.
Yeah.
And my package room isn't open on Sundays. So basically it didn't get into the freezer. Right. So by the time it got there, and then I was out of town. Yep. So I opened it a week later. Oh my God. And it was the most rancid smell you've ever smelled in your life. Yeah. But it was such a brilliant campaign. And I just love what they're doing.
Side note, Logic Meat Locker, that's why we pivoted.
Yes.
Because when you're shipping frozen, you can only ship Monday through Wednesday, and if somebody's not home, who's responsible? Yeah. And it was like, that's the exact reason we're like, we got to get out of this frozen business.
All right.
But amazing marketing idea. Like Peter Ray Hall is a really sharp guy.
What are some other brands in kind of in and around your space, like food broadly, that you really admire?
Yeah. So I think about like brands that have really reinvigorated categories. So like Annie's, John Forker, what he did for mac and cheese, right? I mean, I think the stat still is like, I think Annie's mac and cheese is larger than Kraft mac and cheese, which is just insane to think about that. Another one that I just really like is Chobani. What Hamdi did for the yogurt category, right? Like
incredible speaker, incredible story, just such a
and still privately held, and still growing or acquiring other companies, and like it's just, if you think about the yogurt space before him, it was all the same flavors, it was the same like almost watery, but like he brought this completely different experience, and now there's every single different types of yogurt under the sun, and so that it's just crazy to see what he's done. But then even like new income, like I love like Good Culture, right? Cottage cheese, like who would have thought that you could make cottage cheese cool, right? And so like I feel like it's what Chomps did for the jerky set. These other brands that are like really refreshing categories that are necessary. It's necessary, right?
Let's talk about some fun fun stats. Anything you can share? Do you have we've sell this many pounds of meat a year, this many are there any really fun, I've seen the stat about 2 million sticks is it a day?
Yeah, so we're currently producing 2 million a day.
which is insane.
It's a lot, and it'll be about 3 to 3.5 million like next year, as we continue to scale. Look, I mean, we are scaled at this point.
Yeah.
I think retail sales will do close to $1 billion. We're still growing, I would say, 50 to 60% year over year. That's about the extent of it. We're pretty
And by
quiet
the way,
with numbers and stuff.
yeah,
but
well,
at the end
I
of
was-
the day,
I was
but
even
I would say,
thinking-
like, I mean, it's scale. But like, I honestly, like, when I think about my 26 plan, my 3-year, my long range plan, 3 years, like, I'm so excited because I feel like we're just getting started. We're scratching the surface. There's so much opportunity. You talked about like the GLP-1s, like everybody's realizing, you know, it's tough to hit your protein goals,
Right.
and people want to find a healthy, a tasty, convenient solution.
Way to do it.
And Chomps offers that. And it's like, and it's the best quality you can get. So, I mean, I can give you stats about where we're at today, but I think when I think about where we're going, like it's pretty crazy. I mean, with just our stick business, I want to continue to keep the team very disciplined and very focused. It's tough sometimes because that next shiny thing is really cool and exciting,
Yeah.
but like I think our current lineup is pretty amazing too. But you'll see, like next year, you'll see some really cool flavors. I can't say what they are now, but I think the next several months there's some cool things coming down the pipe.
Awesome. All right, last question we ask everybody on the show. You get to have a death row meal. Now you can mix and match. You can be like, I want this from here, this from there.
Right.
Who's your death row meal, and who are the 3 people you're sharing it with?
So I love food.
They can be
Yeah.
living or dead.
Okay, so I'm half Pakistani, half Italian. I love everything, but I also eat, like the classic answer would be like an amazing steak from, say, Bavette's or something. But like I eat so much steak and so much chicken. I think it would have to be a seafood meal. I'll give our friend RJ Melman a call out. I love, maybe it's RPM Seafood.
I had the
It's a-
halibut last night at RPM Seafood. It's so good.
Probably a friend's boat, pull
Yeah.
up on the river, have them serve it, have some oysters, and have the black miso cod and some of the crab. But probably an amazing seafood meal. Who would join me? Probably my dad, who he passed about 7 years ago. He was like the anchor of our family. He wasn't able to see like the success of Chomps, and so like being able to give him the update on where we're at, and honestly, probably with my wife and kids. I mean, I think that would be the most perfect situation. He was also a fan of seafood too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Rashid, thank you so much. This was amazing conversation. What a hell of a business you've built.
Thank you.
For those of you that want to learn more about, I know like socials is not huge for you personally, but like where can people go to find out more about Chomps?
Yeah, I would say chomps.com. If you want to try the product, you can buy it at Amazon. Pretty likely any of your retailers, grocery stores are gonna carry it. If you want to like follow me, like LinkedIn is probably the extent of it. But again, yeah, I really appreciate the time. This was an awesome conversation. I always love the opportunity to be able to tell a little bit more about the Chomp story.
Well, it's an amazing one. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you.